Yo, what's good, guys? Another video here. Today we got American versus European suburbs. Now, let's get into this. Before we do, honestly, I don't understand quite yet how they're gonna make the American suburbs like so bad, but I'm sure they'll find a way.
Typical American suburban street. It's wide, the houses are very far apart and look mostly the same.
Okay, well, the house space is, in my opinion, I think that's a good thing, right? Like, more space between you and the neighbors, houses looking the same. That's a valid argument. That, like, I feel like a lot of suburbs kind of have, like, the cookie cutter, copy and paste kind of houses. That is definitely a fair dig.
There is barely anything on the well-manicured lawns, post boxes, a few trees or bushes, and the occasional fire hydrant. Now compare this to a suburb in Leipzig, Germany. What differences do you notice?
Alright, I'm gonna be honest.
First off, there is...
These look more like apartments, whereas like I look at suburbs more as like houses and like upper class houses. So but like this side definitely has houses.
Stuff around you. The streetscape is very diverse and mentally engaging. In comparison, the American suburb looks like a desolate urban wasteland.
I'm not gonna lie, your suburbs look a lot
Also,
better. Your suburbs look a lot better. I must say that. But your suburbs look like little cities. Like this looks like a city. Whereas, like, the suburbs, it looks like it's kind of a, I don't know, more out in a country area. Well, not country area, but less truly suburban, I guess is the right word.
The street is narrow, there is a 30 km/h speed limit, and the buildings are close together. Do notice the tram tracks. In this suburb, you can live car-free. If you want to go to the center, you can either take the tram or ride your bike for 20 minutes on dedicated bike lanes.
The bike lanes are so much nicer too. Like where I live now is one of the first places I've ever lived where like I actually have a bike lane, and like even the bike lanes just so crappy. Like look, your guys' roads look so good. Our roads look garbage.
Or take the S-Bahn because there's also a train station. In the American suburb, you have no option but to drive. Head out onto the busiest road, a horrifying mix of street and road.
Well, you have sidewalks which you could take the bike on, but that also, it depends where you live too with the suburb. Like, there's suburbs where that's very true, there's suburbs where that's very not.
A jammed highway, and after an hour you'll be in the center, searching for a parking spot.
That's true, that's true. I can't argue with that, he's right.
How about going to a restaurant? In the European suburb, there are dozens of different, unique, local restaurants reachable on foot, by bike, or public transit. In the American suburb, you're an hour walk away from a chain restaurant next to a busiest road. If you want to eat, you gotta get in your car.
I feel like the suburb he picked for the American suburb was more of a neighborhood than a suburb. Like, that's just my honest opinion, because when he's pointing this out, like, at first I looked at it, I was like, yeah, it's the suburbs, but the more he's pointing stuff out, I'm like, this feels like our suburbs are more like cookie cutter neighborhoods than true suburbs. Because, like, a suburb is, like, more supposed to be city, isn't it? Like, isn't the technical term for suburb, like, the outskirts of a city?
What if you have children? In this European suburb, there are 3 schools close by. Kids can walk or bike there on their own and learn to be independent early on. In the American suburb, a child could get to school after 35 minutes of walking, mostly along a busy arterial road, also having to cross a 6-lane road. And somehow, there's no crosswalk, so kids have to be driven to school every day by mommy and daddy.
That is a fair thing to point out. Personally, a place I lived in, like, middle school, I was very close to the school. Too close for my own happiness, honestly. So, that again, it's one of those things where it depends, but he's making a lot of good points. The part that impresses me more, though, is just, even though I'm gonna be honest, me personally, I think I'd rather live where the houses are more spread out, just so, there's more yard space and you can do more outside on your property. But if, I must say the, suburbs in the other country he's showing is so much more pretty.
Same goes for sports.
And so much more interesting to look at.
Over here, kids can take a 10-minute walk to the nearest sports field or a 3-minute bike ride on calm, safe streets on their own. In the US, it's a 40-minute march through a maze of streets partially along a major transit artery. Gotta get in the SUV and let mommy drive you to practice. This is where the term soccer mom originates from, by the way. People lament today's children for being overly dependent on their parents. But in such neighborhoods, children don't have a choice but to be dependent. Otherwise, they cannot go anywhere. They are stuck at home. In contrast, in European suburbs, kids can be let out safely to move around on their own, to go to places they want to, without the need for the mommy and daddy taxi service. Do note that yellow residential building on the left. That is a mid-rise. European suburbs tend to be a mixture of those and single or multi-family homes, like on this street.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was talking about earlier, where it's I've not really seen a lot in my life of apartments in suburbs. Normally the suburbs are the big houses spread out, normally we're rather upper class types of places. The suburbs not really, generally speaking, a place with a bunch of apartments and all that. Damn, though. The time of year he chose to shoot this too, with all the different colored leaves and shit like that, is beautiful.
Zoning in US suburbs only allows for single-family homes, and they are usually placed very far apart, leading to low density and long distances. This makes public transportation non-viable. Over here in Europe, hundreds of people live within walking distance of this tram stop. In the US, if you put a tram stop here, you'd have a few dozen people living within walking distance. Meaning, even if you built public transit here, almost nobody would take it, because no matter how you build it, people would be too far away from it. If you're half an hour away on foot from the nearest tram stop, you'll take your car instead. And people do. So giant highways had to be built, rammed right into the city, usually demolishing non-white neighborhoods in the process. The end result was mass motorization all across America, constant traffic jams, noise and pollution, but not for the suburbanites. It was the urban dwellers, particularly those who were poor, who had to live near high traffic areas in cheap, low-quality housing. The suburbs also became a growth Ponzi scheme, where income from the suburbs couldn't cover future infrastructure overhauls, so the city had to expand and sell new properties constantly to get enough money to maintain what they already have. Not Just Bikes did a great video about this, link in the description. The suburbs and car-centric development were useful political tools in the 1950s to enforce a Christian conservative, white nationalist hierarchy within American society, where white men are on top, women are at home, fully dependent on their husbands, and where all resources are channeled towards the white middle and upper class in the form of billions in state subsidies. And the rest of society, poor people, non-whites, were left to fend for themselves in decaying urban centers, sucked dry financially by the parasitic suburbs around them. Car-centric planning became a weapon of choice for conservatives in order to maintain the unequal status quo. And this phenomenon isn't unique to America. In Europe, as our cities transition away from cars, the opponents of this change are almost always conservatives. While the incumbent Paris mayor campaigned on eliminating 50,000 parking spaces, her conservative opponent, who looks frankly diabolical even by French standards,
damn! Why is okay, time out though. Why she look like Cruella de Vil off 101 Dalmatians?
wanted to halt decongestion measures. In Prague, a city overrun by cars, conservatives keep screaming about the cyclo-fascists ruining the city after a shadow is painted somewhere. Meanwhile, conservative district mayors are busy turning sidewalks into parking lots. In Madrid, the conservative city leadership cancelled the ultra-low emission zones, leading to local protests to bring them back. In Budapest, we have Orbán's far-right conservatives screaming about how there is a witch hunt against drivers by the new center-left mayor, and complaining how in inner-city Budapest it's almost faster to walk now than to drive. Even in Germany, Bavarian conservatives are dumping money into highways while letting the rail network fall into disrepair. As a rule of thumb, in every city with decongestion measures, you'll also find conservatives screaming about the war on cars, the symbol of hierarchy in transportation, where the affluent suburban minority gets to occupy 80% of public space inside cities, compared to the more egalitarian space use of public transit and bicycles. God forbid you have to get out of your giant SUV of death and get on a tram with the peasants. Of course,
giant SUV of death. Damn. Time out. Reload. Look at that thing,
public
though.
Space inside cities, compared to the more egalitarian space use of public transit and bicycles.
The fuck? I can't decide if that thing's ugly as shit or fucking sweet, because it's kind of both. I'm not gonna lie. Like, the wheels on that thing don't match. Who the hell decided to lift an SUV? What is this thing? Like, it's kind of so stupid that it, like, reverses into being cool.
God forbid you have to get out of your giant SUV of death and get on a tram with the peasants. Of course, upholding the conservative hierarchy isn't why suburbs are built today in the US. It's mostly just a necessary continuation of the Ponzi scheme that began with the first suburbs. Also, it's due to faulty zoning codes not allowing for mid-rise developments that would actually make more money for the city, increase density, and make public transit viable. In Europe, our suburbs are mixed, with both mid-rises, single and multi-family homes. They're an organic part of the city and contribute fairly to the local budget. There is also subsidized, affordable public transit. All in all, it's more egalitarian. And if the US situation sounds depressing in contrast, as an American, there are things you can do to potentially help change things. If there is a local transit riders union, go join it. Look if there are any initiatives on the ballot for traffic calming, bike lanes, etc. Show up to your local town hall meetings and advocate for zoning reform, ending parking minimums, and so on. If you're persistent enough, your ideas will be heard, and you can help push America back towards sensible, fair, more egalitarian urban planning, one neighborhood at a time. That's what I would do if I were you. Thank you for watching. Oh, and by the way, there is now a new membership option for my channel, so if you wish to support me making content like this, please consider becoming a member by pressing the join button next to the subscribe button.
I'm not gonna lie, he made a lot of good points I never thought of. Like, he actually did. I will say, though, I feel like, and this goes for both sides, it is unfair to point out, say, one suburb that he's gone through's location and how it is, and then say, like, that's an, point on all suburbs in the US. Like, that's not true. But there are definitely a good enough amount of, places in that kind of situation where it is so far from everything, in, like, a town where it's a decent enough, like, there's a good enough to make that argument, but it's not like that is every single suburb is like that. But, like, say, one thing I've never seen before that he pointed out is, like, I've never seen apartments in suburbs. Like, I've never seen that, ever. So that is a good, like, that's something I never even thought of, where it's like, why isn't that there? Like, I don't know. And, like, say, for example, where I live, right? Like, we do have a bike lane. Now, it's crappy. It's nowhere near as nice as the one that was shown in, the video. Or, like, we do have close buses where I live, because I don't live in as small of a town as I used to anymore. So, we actually do have buses. But, like, so it's not necessarily, now, of course, I don't live in, like, the super upper class burbs. I kind of live in, like, a, like, middle class area. Like, I'm not in, like, a rich area, but I'm not in, like, a poor slummy area either. But, like, there's definitely places that aren't as extreme as the place he pointed out, but he still made a lot of very good points that have a lot of validation to them. So either way, give me a giant like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, click all, let me know what else you'd like me to watch, and I'm out. Bye. With